Mayor Lightfoot's campaign has come under criticism this week for reaching out to Chicago public school teachers as well as City College instructors. This is a story that WTTW's Heather Sharon broke. What did she find out?
She found some teachers in Chicago public schools who had gotten this email from someone who identified herself and who identifies herself as a deputy campaign manager for Lightfoot for Chicago, saying, hey, just so you know, here's this great opportunity for some of your students. If they're looking for something to do in their off time, they can volunteer to re-elect our great mayor, work for the Lightfoot for Chicago campaign, and guess what? They can even earn some class credit if they do so. I think that some of them looked at that and they were like, oh, what is this? It got to Heather and she found out and wrote about it. And I think that half of the story was Lightfoot's 3 successive statements kind of changing her posture in response to it from, this is completely fine, I don't know what you're all so upset about. Paraphrasing here, obviously. The second one being, okay, out of an abundance of caution, we're gonna stop our campaign from doing this. And the third being, okay, we recognize this is wrong and we're gonna stop it. I think that it is a valid question, sort of what's the big deal about this? They're just reaching out and asking if students want to volunteer and giving them the opportunity. I think that you have to remember the really deep and sort of toxic and endemic legacy of patronage in Chicago, that the way that it really used to work is that incumbents would use all of the levers of government to advance their own political means, and it would entrench people in power and create a kind of unfair system. And it's only been through decades and decades of cultural change and multiple federal consent decrees that has been rooted out. And so you can see why a lot of people's hackles went up when the mayor, who is essentially, their boss because she appoints all of the members still of the Board of Education and picks the CEO, used government means and used government email addresses to say, hey, you can work for my campaign and help get me reelected. There can be a sense of maybe intimidation, like, well, this is someone who I'm working for. Will there maybe be repercussions if I don't? I'm sure that the mayor would wave that away as ridiculous. She had a press conference yesterday, and credit to her, she immediately sort of called a media availability and answered lots of questions from reporters about this. And she very confidently and repeatedly said this was just a one-off incident from this deputy campaign manager who she kept referring to as a young staffer. Okay. A young staffer who clearly didn't know any better and didn't coordinate it with anyone, didn't coordinate with CPS. Of course, the big question now is if she knew that she could offer credit for campaign activity, how could she not have coordinated with CPS? How could she not have coordinated with anyone? That is a good question.
Because she has no real power naturally to just give course credit willy-nilly, right?
Right. I mean, that's the takeaway from this, and what Lightfoot was asked about it and said, well, I wasn't really involved in those low-level discussions. I'm also the mayor. I'm too busy for that kind of stuff. But also in the next breath, she was able to very confidently say there was absolutely no coordination. This was a completely one-off thing. We're going to have to save that tape because literally I think as that press conference was happening, this a little bit more has been coming out in drips. With the City College's incident that you mentioned, apparently in August, someone, it's not clear if it was the same person, but also reached out to City Colleges offering a similar, kind of opportunity for course credit. City Colleges.
So this has happened before.
It has happened before. Yeah. City Colleges rejected it and reported it and threw it away and asked the campaign not to do that anymore. So at that point, it becomes a systemic issue. Why wasn't it stopped?
Yeah. Well, our folks on YouTube are chiming in. Chicago 675 says, when I first saw a tweet about the Lightfoot CPS email from a CPS teacher, I thought it was fake news. I was like, no way. And they say Lightfoot is in trouble. Any thoughts there, Brandon? Dan, is this unethical, offering students class credit for volunteering on her campaign?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to give whether it's ethical or not. I know the CPS Code of Ethics, though, this was in violation of that, of campaigns using teacher emails, cps.edu emails to do campaign business and things like that. Mm-hmm. It's against that code of ethics for sure. And you got the ACLU looking into it right now and CPS Watchdog looking into it. So those questions will be, determine for sure. But it's definitely icky. I mean, it definitely this dangling this carrot of class credit. If I'm a student who's struggling in math like I was, sure, I'll work for your campaign if it means I get some credit out of it. Like,
for sure.
It feels weird. And so this is a mayor who ran on doing things differently than the Chicago political way. Bringing in the light was the slogan. So for her to say, well, this is the way it's always been done, it just counteracts what you ran on in that first campaign and kind of re-hits upon the critique people have of her and her time in office, that she just didn't fulfill her campaign originally. So I think that's why it does matter. It's easy to kind of be like, it's some emails, but it points to what her values are, how things are actually run within her department.
Well, not to mention that, but just the politics, setting aside the ethical questions for a moment,
Yeah.
the politics of it are kind of crazy because the Chicago Teachers Union has been like her largest political nemesis during her years in office.
Right.
And going through members of the Chicago Teachers Union to offer their students this opportunity to work on her campaign is just like,
It seems like a bad
It doesn't make sense.
like you had to know if you were sending that through members of the CTU that it was going to get out and it was going to not look good.
It was
for your
not going to be
campaign.
good for you. Yeah.
Yeah,